Maybe if your organs and nervous system were symmetrical, you could make the case for your stance being symmetrical too. Until then, I don't think you're going to die if your squat stance is asymmetrical. You are not as broken as this industry would like you to believe.
Where do I start with that? I think the fitness industry in general has become so dogmatic and focused on certain rules. Rules make a lot of sense. Like we like straight lines, we like angles, we like being able to keep things perfectly symmetrical. That kind of fits. But the human body doesn't work that way. We're designed to be very, very adaptive to whatever stresses you throw at it. But also more importantly, we weren't designed symmetrically. Like nothing about your body is meant to be symmetrical. And it can be something like you are left-handed or right-handed. That's going to force you to be dominant on one side, not just in having a stronger right arm, but all the muscles of your torso will be rotated a certain way. But it even goes beyond that. Like even if you were purely ambidextrous, you'll find literally within your structure, everybody's rib cage is rotated. Everybody's brain sits in your skull in a slight degree of rotation as well. Does that rotation of your brain actually impact everything else? I got no fucking clue. But more importantly, your body is just not designed to fit into these rigid structures. But we oversimplify and we try to think of ourselves as mechanical machines that should be conforming to these perfectly symmetrical mechanical boundaries all the time, which just simply isn't the case. When you look at just how we're meant to move. So I think a lot of the fitness community and a lot of the even rehab world, they take this mechanistic look at our bodies and how we're meant to be functioning, and it's created a lot of fear, which is a big issue. Because I think the number one issue that people have with their training or exercise is that they're not doing it. It's not that their left foot is turned out 5 degrees too much or 10 degrees too little or whatever it is compared to their right side. It's more so that they're not moving because they're afraid that if they were to move, they're going to injure something. But if we look to the actual literature, evidence, not even literature, just look at what anecdotally causes pain and injuries more than anything else. It's not improper technique, which sounds surprising. It's more so from a mismanagement of your intensity and how hard you're pushing yourself and how you're recovering overall. And that's kind of where the technique thing comes into play. Because people are like, oh, because you did this asymmetrical thing or because you moved in a way that wasn't perfectly symmetrical with your technique, that's why I got injured. It's like that might increase probability of injuries. But the fact is, why is it that you don't get an injury in your lower back from sitting in your car, driving in a car, asymmetrical sitting position? You don't get injured there because the load is so low. The intensity is so low and your body can adapt to it. That same equation can be played out to a much higher scale with squatting, leg pressing, deadlifting, whatever it is. As long as your body is set within the constraint of your recovery and your strength capacities and your overall intensity, you can recover and you can adapt. So we need to remove the limitation of telling people that you're meant to be symmetrical, that you need to have perfect technique all the time, because perfect technique doesn't exist. Perfect technique is a continuum. And it's going to vary day to day. It's going to vary within the same individual based on how they're moving on that given day, how they're feeling. And we need to have more faith in ourselves to be able to adapt. There's this concept that was first proposed by an economist, I think he was, this guy called Nassim Taleb, of anti-fragility. And it was used more to describe the stock market and people trying to predict when things are going to burst or when there's going to be a climb or something, when there's going to be a bit bull or a bear market. And he described this notion of anti-fragility. And that applies very much to the human body as well, where when you have something like a glass, like literally a glass of water or something, that glass that's containing that water, that can be seen as fragile. Whereas something like a steel pot, that's something that is not anti-fragile. It's robust and it's strong. Anti-fragility lies somewhere in the middle, where it's not just that you're not going to break very easily, it's that being exposed to volatility and to stress actually makes you come back stronger. because that steel, whatever object, if you expose it to enough stress, it still breaks. It doesn't come back stronger at all. The human organism, and also apparently the stock market, I don't really know that, but it's anti-fragile. We're exposing it to more stress, exposing it to more of this demands. It comes back for the better, as long as it can recover. And that's the perfect analogy for how the human body reacts as well.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Like I don't think you could have said that better. I think what I really took away from it and I enjoyed looking at is that not one human is the same. And I think with society today, it's very easy to go like, I want to look like that or I want to perform like that, when the reality is you need to perform to your maximal capability. And I think one really big take home point was there was like that phase where everyone was like talking about HRV, like heart rate variability, where it's like, okay, like I'm not good to train, I shouldn't train. And I was like, if I lived by that, I wouldn't be training for 3-4 weeks, because there's some times where I don't want to train at all. And more often than not, it's just important to show up and to work hard and not be so focused on the little things. And really, like if you have a leg day and you prefer to sit on a leg press than you do squatting, then maybe just work with that for a little bit, progressively overload that, and then look into other avenues later down the track.
Yeah. I mean, one thing people forget with training is that you're meant to feel shit. The goal of training is to feel like shit a good amount of the time. Like where you're meant to wake up the next day and be like, wow, I think I pushed too hard. Not to the point of injury. Like you do that enough, and then if you do it too much, you're probably going to hurt yourself. But, a good rule of thumb is a third of your workouts, you should leave feeling like that was way too easy. A third of your work, you should be feeling like, yeah, that was tough, manageable, I got through it. And then the final third should be like, that was probably too much. I'm glad I did it and I didn't burst into flames, but I really pushed my limits and I went too hard. And I woke up feeling just like absolute shit. And it's those workouts that are really important to tell your body you need to adapt, you need to change. And if you look at your HRV or your whatever other statistics you want to use with your different wearables, like I use all kinds of wearables, you need to know how to look at the numbers and say, that data shows I'm under-recovered. Good. I'm supposed to be under-recovered. I'm supposed to see my sleep score going down right now because I'm intentionally trying to overreach and push myself for whatever my goal is, whether it's marathon training or it's an endurance event or it's bodybuilding or whatever. There has to come a point where you're at your breaking point and you stay there for a little bit of time, because then your body has a stimulus to adapt to. Otherwise, you're just sort of doing work, but you're not reaching that threshold where your body's actually going to improve and change.
Same goes for work as well, I'm guessing.
Exactly the same. It's same for work, same for every aspect in life. It has the same kind of thing where you need to challenge yourself, and it's not going to feel good all the time. That's part of life. That's why I think so many people connect with training in the gym, especially the last, because like all these life lessons you get, they're so analogous to what you go through with working out. And if you can translate those lessons into what you do outside of the gym, you can be quite unstoppable.
And I think we'll get to bodybuilding soon, but that's my biggest takeaway from bodybuilding as a whole. Barbells are convenient, but extremely overrated and unnecessary.
They are. They are. And this is coming from somebody who does 70% barbell work at the moment and has done that for a long time. Again, due to convenience. I'm training at home a lot of the time, or sometimes even in my gym where I've got 50 odd pieces of equipment that I could be using in lieu of a barbell for different body parts. I'll still choose the barbell just for simplicity, and it's fine. But that's me personally. And when I'm trying to give advice to people as a coach on how they should be viewing the decisions that they make with their training, we should be making these things based on logic, not emotion. Me choosing a barbell because it's hardcore, because Ronnie Coleman and Arnold Schwarzenegger did it because it's old school, that's an emotional attachment, which is cool to have. Like, I respect what they do. But if I look at the person in front of me and I'm like, for you to have to go through the stages of learning how to squat with a barbell on your back, that can take several sessions to really improve your quality of movement, which is a very, very worthwhile journey to go through for many people. But if you've come to me because I just need to get you moving in general, if I have you leaving a session being like, I didn't really move much, but I kind of learned how to squat and my back is kind of achy. My ankles felt all kind of gummed up and I'm not really feeling this right now. I just wanted to get a good workout in. And I made that decision because I just wanted to do barbells because they're hardcore and you must fit into that glove at all times of doing barbells. That's a big issue. Whereas instead for the same person, I could have been like, hey, let's do a split squat. Still free weight, still loadable. It challenges the muscles that we want. It's more accessible for you. Same thing could be made for maybe a leg press or step up, a lunge, or any other exercise. It can just be a body weight, dumbbell loaded by my side or goblet squat instead. There are so many other versatile options that have a lower skill acquisition rate. So you'll pick it up instantly. And you don't have to spend that time learning this barbell movement because it's not part of the person's goals. For many people, it could be. And it's like, hey, knock yourself out, do the barbell stuff. But even for that person who said they wanted to get really good with barbell exercises, I might start them out on these other movements because I want to build up their motor awareness, their conditioning in general, and I want to improve their ability. I want to improve their chances of success when they get to the barbell squat. So when they get to that barbell squat, it just moves really well. They don't feel that stiffness, that tightness. They pick it up really, really easily. You don't have to worry about teaching them how to brace or support themselves because they've spent even just 2 sessions doing a goblet squat. And that taught them how to brace. That's cool, more accessible. But I think so much of what we do has been influenced by emotion. I'm saying this is the hardcore way. This is what a gym is for. You got to graduate off the machines, get to the barbells. Where it should just be, here are all the tools available to you. Pick what makes sense to you.
All about context, right?
Context, which is a boring answer, and it requires that nuanced approach. And people are just like, I just let me fucking train, bro. It's like, well, yeah, for a lot of people, the people who push back against an argument like that, they're the people who probably could get away with it. They were just very motivated to persevere on the technique of those exercises, or they picked them up when they were very, very young and they can't even remember what it was like learning those skills. It's very different if you grew up, started training at 13 years old with the bench press and deadlifts and squats, and you spent those first years just screwing around and eventually picking it up, versus someone who's in their late 20s, early 30s, even their 40s or so, going to the gym for the first time. If they're not moving well, I don't want to waste any time of them trying to learn a barbell movement just because it exists as a thing to do. It's still a cool skill, still an awesome goal to have to work towards, but it's overrated.
Yeah, I think I had an AC joint, I think it's osteolysis, back in 2019, and I had to literally pull my bench press. I didn't really pull it out altogether, but I pulled all the weight off the bar, and it was very demotivating at first. But then it almost unlocked way more chest growth and way less chance of injury because I went back to dumbbells. I focused on going to like the top of my bicep rather than just to my chest. I was increasing my range of motion. And I found, this is when I was prepping and stuff, and I found my chest looked its best it ever had and I didn't have to lift as much because I found that I was doing it the right way. So I had to strip all the weight back. Then I had no niggle and I just built it up over time over the next 2 years. And I got the best results I probably got with my chest from learning from the injury that my range of motion probably was inadequate for what I wanted at the time.
Well, here's something people don't consider is there are certain people who are well suited to barbell exercises. Just like there are certain people who are well built for swimming or for basketball or footy, just based on their structures. There are certain structures that are better suited to barbell exercises. I'm really well suited to bench press. I've got short arms, I've got a big rib cage, and I can really arch my back, which puts me into a really good position to not just bench press, but to bench press relatively heavy because I've got a shorter range of motion, but also because of the arch in my back, I can use a lot more of my chest muscles. Somebody who has a shallower rib cage, maybe slightly longer arms, when they bench press, even with perfect technique, they're going to get more on their shoulders. They're going to get more on their triceps. It's just unavoidable. And they'll still get chest.
Would you choose a bench press over dumbbells for yourself personally?
I don't, because I know how to curb my enthusiasm and not do it all the time, because otherwise I'll get overzealous, push too hard, and I'll probably injure something.
Yeah.
So if I had if I was coaching someone if I was coaching myself like Zach body double, I'd give them a barbell bench press because they're going to respond really well to it. Someone like yourself, I wouldn't, because you're a very different structure. Doesn't mean you can't get exceptionally good at bench pressing. Doesn't mean that there are ways that you can get more out of your chest as well from doing barbell bench pressing as well. But the odds are kind of stacked against you. So I'd rather lean into what your strengths would be. And if you said to me, Eugene, I really, really want to get a 3-plate bench press no matter what, I was like, fuck it, let's do it. And here's how we're going to do it. And we're going to push you to get that. Because definitely it's still a very great, fantastic exercise and tool. But if you don't have that attachment to it for whatever reason, you say, I want to get a big chest or I want to just be strong in my upper body, I don't care what I do. I'll say, let's probably deprioritize that as a movement that's going to be in your repository of movements that you'll choose from, because your structure just isn't the best for it. And there are probably going to be better picks, because we have to choose wisely when you only have maybe an hour in a workout to train, and maybe only hitting your chest or doing these pushing exercises maybe 3 times in a week. It's like, okay, we've got to be very judicious in how we push things to keep you injury-free, keep you progressing, but also keep you motivated and happy with what you're doing.
You tore your pec in 2019?
No, it was a couple of years ago, honestly. It was
2021 then?
Yeah, 21 or 22. I was in the States at the time, so I think 2022.
Okay.
Yeah.
And was that just a rare occurrence? You were over fatigued? Were you lifting heavy?
Yeah. I mean, that's a perfect example where like even someone like myself with the perfect structure for bench pressing and things like that. And this comes back to the first point about like fragility. My body's not prepared. I just wasn't prepared for that moment. Even though I'd been doing a lot of dumbbell bench pressing, a lot of full range of motion dips with very heavy weights, because of the circumstances around that injury where we just finished 30 hours or so of flying, very dehydrated in a new environment, hadn't slept much whatsoever, and I was sick as well. And I just jumped into a workout with a buddy of mine, and he was bench pressing, and I hadn't done a barbell bench press in a long time. Compound that, literally on the set a couple of sets beforehand, he was like, you know what, this bench is a bit skinny. I don't know if you ever use a bench before, but when you have like a really big, wide powerlifting bench versus some of the really skinny, slim ones, you don't have that same support in your upper back. It doesn't feel as comfortable, and I guess, it just doesn't feel as comfortable. It's like, it just feels a little bit thin, but I'm sure it's fine. And that's where I don't like calling it ego lifting, because I wasn't like, yeah, bro, let's do a 1 rep max, just chuck the plates on. But it was also ego lifting, because I thought, surely, even though I'm so under recovered, surely I can just jump in and I'll be fine for this workouts. But it was literally during a warm-up set. I was doing 2 or 3 sets on the same weight for my warm-ups, because I like to spend more time to acclimate myself. It was on like the 3rd or 4th warm-up set, I tore something. I was like, this is fucked. But it just shows like there's a lot more that goes into play when it comes to injuries. It's not about the imbalances side to side. It's not that your body's just completely fragile. It's that there's so many other circumstances that any other given day, I would have been fine to train and to push through. But there was just too many things piling up against me on that day, and also just a big heaping of bad luck. I was like, hey, that is what it is.
What was your mindset straight after you did it, and then over the coming weeks as well?
Well, straight after, I knew it happened. And I said to Katrina, I said to her, I just tore my pec. Don't tell anybody. I'm going to keep training because having fun. And I just got to just put on a brave face and keep going, because I don't want to just ruin the day. Don't want to be that guy. But afterwards, even then I was still very optimistic. I said, like, I know it's a tear, but I also know looking at it and feeling it, it wasn't that bad. It could have been so much worse. There was no bruising. I could still move without much pain at all. It was just like, okay, I'm aware that there's something significant that's happened here to my chest. I probably shouldn't train again. I should probably go get it properly looked at and see how big the damage really is. And then I was just looking at it thinking, okay, this kind of sucks, but it just kind of is what it is. Just got to work around it, work through it, and just hope for the best and just be very optimistic around it.
Were you running workshops at this time as well?
Yes. Yeah. So that was...
You kept doing them?
Yeah.
Or, wow.
Yeah. So that was actually 3 or 4 days before my first workshop on part of the Canadian tour.
Wow.
So I was like, fuck, I've got to give these practical physical workshops where I'm like lifting weights and showing things and demonstrating stuff, and I can't use this left arm or pec. Even if it wasn't in pain at all during the workshop, I was like, I know that it's vulnerable where I shouldn't be moving it and loading it. How am I going to show this exercise or whatever? So that was a little bit annoying. But I've been in worse situations before when it comes to teaching. So something where like I knew that I could adapt to it. Like I've done training workshops where I thought I was going to be able to teach in a well-equipped gym. and ended up being put aside into a yoga studio. Like, oh, okay, so I need to now give this exact same strength, conditioning, bodybuilding, whatever biomechanics workshop, and all I have as props are some yoga straps and a couple of the dowel rods.
To your credit, though, if there's someone that's going to figure it out, it would be you.
Well, it forced me to figure it out.
Get into
know?
some banded clams or something.
Yeah.
Get in holding, isometric holds. Yeah.
Exactly. I had to learn how to adapt to a lot of these situations. And it was no different.
Yeah. So, most people performing barbell back squats, bench presses, or conventional deadlifts would get far better results if they didn't perform barbell back squats, bench presses, or conventional deadlifts.
So this one is definitely worded in a way that is intentionally triggering for people, because a lot of people reading that would be, I'm a power lifter. I'm doing squat bench dead as part of my sport. This is fucking bullshit. Because it all revolves around me.
Yeah.
But looking at the majority of people in gyms, are they competitive powerlifters? Are they competitive lifters in any sense of the word? No, they're not. They're your everyday person who wants to get fitter, get a bit stronger, build a bit of muscle. And we're forcing them into these binary exercises that you must do all the time, when the reality is there are no must-do exercises. Barbell squat, conventional deadlift, barbell bench press, fantastic movements, huge benefits to them as well. But there's also a lot of just as good substitutes that people could use instead, if they chose based on what their real goals are, what gives them more range of motion, what feels better for them as well, and what's going to give them the most bang for the buck for their goal. And it could be something as simple as saying, hey, you should be doing maybe, if you're squatting, you can still do maybe a machine-based squat, or maybe you can still do barbell squats, maybe a front squat, maybe a Zercher squat's better because you find you just get really beat up when you're doing back squats all the time. Maybe a safety bar squat. It's not pulling away from hard work. It's allowing you to push that hard work into the most appropriate tool for the job of you wanting to get stronger, stay pain-free, stay injury-free, be able to recover well, and not spend a lot of time in the gym, which is a very, very good thing for a lot of people. Something as simple as, say, a barbell squat, not to demonize, because again, I love that movement. But when you start getting really good at it, even not talking from a competitive standpoint, but when you start getting good at it, it necessitates a really long time to warm up, get your body prepared for it. And sometimes you could get the exact same stimulus that you want for your goals using other movements that tick the same boxes. Maybe it might tick them even better. But again, it comes down to that point of asking, who's the individual in front of you? What are their real goals? Is their real goal to be a really good barbell bench presser, conventional deadlifter, or barbell back squatter? Sometimes it could be, but you'll find the vast majority of the time it's not. And when you stop looking at it from your own personal perspective, saying, I love these movements, I love these movements, but I look at it from trying to train my mum. My mum does not love these movements. I don't want to spend the extra 30 minutes trying to teach her and get her comfortable with the barbell on her back when I could give her a Zercher or a goblet squat.
Does she love a Zercher?
She loves it, just it's comfortable.
Yeah.
It helps her squat straight away.
I think it's comfortable for most people, hey?
Much more comfortable for most people.
Yeah.
It's the anterior load. It's so much easier to get into position. And I don't have to worry about her saying, oh, my neck hurts huge. It hurts it's on my shoulders or my back. I don't like the way this feels. I feel unbalanced because it's heavy weight on my shoulders. There are a lot of barriers to an exercise like that. And the barbell purists say, well, that's just part of it. You know, you got to push her to that point. Like, well, that's my fucking mum.
Yeah.
Okay, she trains with me once a week. She devotes 40 minutes a week to weightlifting and strength training. You can say, make her train more. It's like, well, that's just not feasible for her. Why don't we meet the person where they're at, sort of force them into something that's not ideal for them, and maybe get them more motivated, and then maybe she might want to do it long term. But it's been years. She's got expressed no desire to do a barbell squat, but she's improved her bone density and her strength and her muscle mass, and probably her longevity as well, from doing other just as valid variations, even machine-based things, just given on how she's going at the given time, what makes the most sense.
So, many people are getting progressive overload wrong. Instead of people trying to increase weight to put on muscle, they first need to put on muscle to move more weight. Subtle, yet important differences. One leaves you feeling pretty banged up and miserable, and the other allows you to be, I guess, optimistic and really excited about your training?
Number one mistake that I continue to make to this day with my training is I'll look at last week's performance and be like, you got to beat that. That's it.
It's tough, isn't it?
Yeah. You did 10 reps last week with 50 kilos on whatever exercise it was, bicep curl, of course, lateral raise, 50 kilos. You must get one more rep, or you must do one more kilo or pound. Otherwise, you will not build muscle today. That is the broest thing that I still fall into that trap. And I think there should be some urgency to your lifting. You should be trying to do that. Like every session, I am actually trying to beat my last performance. But I'm also realistic in saying when my body will be able to beat that last performance properly, better English, when will my body actually be able to beat that performance? When it has more muscle. You don't force, you can't lift that extra rep or extra weights without the more muscle mass being there.
Or you're just skewing technique to get there as well, right?
Exactly. Because it's very easy for me to lift more weights or to do more reps or whatever if I slightly change technique, increase the speed, bend the elbow a little bit more, add a little bit more momentum. And these little variables, you might not notice them straight away, but they compound over a few weeks, especially for chasing that target, saying I must get stronger every single week. I must do more reps. I must do more weights. You'll do whatever it takes. And you'll think, yeah, that technique was pretty good. Look back at the video, the technique was pretty good, but it was just that little deviation extra, just so you could squeeze out the extra rep. Yeah. But was that actual gains in muscle tissue? Was that actual gains in strength? Probably not, because we know for sure muscle building is super, super slow. You know, you might be lucky to put on maybe half a pound or so of muscle in a month. And that's even as a beginner. You know, it's a slow process. But that half pound of muscle, that's what might equate to the extra 2 or 3% in progression. So people get confused, and I still find myself chasing it as well as a mistake of wanting to increase the weights all the time. And then when you can't do it, you get frustrated, like, fuck, I couldn't do it. You know, if I didn't get the extra rep, I failed.
It's when HUgene's trying to come out at you, hey?
Yeah.
Come on, you must.
Yeah,
like,
you must
shut
do
up,
it.
Eugene. This is Eugene now.
Exactly. And it leaves you very frustrated. Whereas if you understood how things work with the body is you'll be able to lift the extra rep, lift the extra weight only when your body has built the required extra tissue. That shifts focus. That means you still got to push hard. You still got to have urgency, but you're going to get that reward of doing the extra rep or being able to do the extra weight on the bar only once you've built that muscle. So then the question comes down to, okay, what do I need to do in and out of the gym to facilitate the muscle growth? Training hard, for sure. Got to make sure I'm recovering, got to make sure I'm eating well, got to make sure I'm following a structured program that gives me enough time spent in those challenging moments where my body can thrive and build muscle. And I'll come back in and I should be bigger after a month or whatever it is, and I can then lift more weight.
So hard to teach patience though, isn't it?
Yep.
I find as a coach, the hardest thing is to portray that to someone, to tell them like, I'm going to get you there. I can help you get to wherever you want to be, but you're going to have to give me some time.
Yeah.
That's the hardest thing to portray is because it doesn't, like you said, it doesn't happen overnight. And like what you said that happens over a year is still pretty huge. Like for us, right? It's a great result, but people don't see that, especially with social media. It's like put on 5 kilos of muscle this year or lose 5 kilos of fat over the next 4 weeks or whatever it may be. And everyone's just so consumed by these notions that don't exist or are so irrelevant that they forget that patience and effort is what it comes down to.
Yes, which is boring.
Which is boring, yeah.
It's boring.
But it works.
It works. It works. And that's where it's really important to embrace what you're really training for, I think. And I think a lot of people, myself included, you focus too much on the outcome, saying, I'm going to be bigger, build muscle, I'm going to look better. Whereas what we're really doing is the ones who succeed the most at this game of just going to the gym, not even trying to bodybuild, just going to the gym, those who succeed the most and who have an abundance of positive body image, self-talk, they look at this and say, your body's a side effect of you enjoying hard work. Push hard and enjoy the hard work, enjoy that process more than anything else. And if you can find a way to enjoy that, then your body will look the way that you want it to look long term, because you embrace the patience, you embrace that process, you embrace the enjoyment of hard work, more than just saying, I'm doing this because I want to look like that, or because I hate myself and I want to look better.
Should stop and reset before you even pursue that, hey?
Yeah, and it's a very, very challenging thing, because what's going to get your foot in the door probably is a lot of self-loathing. Like, I don't like how I look. I'm really fed up with myself. I want to just look like that. I want to be like that. So I got to get in and start training, even though I hate it. But hopefully somewhere along the lines of doing all that, you're able to start to connect with, why am I really continuing to do this? Oh, new bicep vein, that's kind of cool. But is it more so because you really enjoyed selling a challenge to yourself, saying, I want to push myself as hard as I can today, and get to the end of the session and say, you did a really good job. Not because you built more muscle, but because you pushed yourself. And that's what I tell myself literally within every single set, every single workout. I want to finish that set and be like, I didn't just hit the 10 rep target, or I didn't just execute that technique really nicely or remove momentum. I say, would I really be proud of that effort that I put into that set? Did I really give it everything in terms of my focus, my attention? Did I check that box? And that's what keeps me going. It's not about getting a gigantic bicep pump. It's about saying, did I execute every single one of those repetitions of that preacher curl to a high standard of quality? And did I push myself even when I didn't want to? Because I don't enjoy the pain in the gym. I don't enjoy that feeling. Some people love it. Like, I don't fucking like that. I don't like working very hard in that sense. But I like the idea of saying, I want to stop, but I'll keep going. So I finish that and I say, did I get to a point where I wanted to stop? Yes. Did I keep going in spite of that? Yes. That gives me a lot of fulfillment and joy.
And up here as well for the rest of the day. Yeah.
Exactly. Then I say, okay, cool. If you can do that, then you have no excuse for anything else in life where like, I'm sitting down, I've got to write a new email newsletter. I do not want to do this. This is very painful to me mentally. I will not do it. The end. No. Instead you say, no, if I can show up for myself in the gym, why can't I show up for myself in this other task? Why can't I show up for myself in doing the dishes, taking out the bins, or whatever it is, whatever uncomfortable, painful, in inverted comma situation you're in? You shouldn't make an excuse for yourself. If you can make the excuses, but you put yourself in the gym, then you're just being self-indulgent. I think, well, surely you should be able to apply that elsewhere in life if you want more from yourself.
Now that we've uncovered my favorite threads personally,
yeah,
I want to know more about who Eugene Teo really is. I want to know more about your upbringing, your childhood, the love for guitar. Like, I'm trying to get into it recently.
Right.
I suck. Working on it. And I want to know more about what motivates you to do what you're doing today.
My biggest motivations would be curiosity, connection, and improvement. I'm always looking, like, even being in a setup like this, one thing I'm like, oh, it's a really cool place. I would love to be able to build something like this for myself. A really nice studio to record in. That's really cool. I wonder how they've done soundproofing in here. But the thing that really drives me more is the curiosity of like, I wonder how it's rigged up. Why have they chosen to put this light here on the dummy side and not on that far side there, where it would give you a more cinematic lighting setup? However, if they did that, it'd be very hard to frame things up properly, because the lenses they're using would show this lighting in the background. It may not be a very attractive look. So that's why they've done that. Unless they brought this way over here, but it'd probably show up in that wide shot. But this curiosity is what motivates me. And I have that curiosity about everything that we do, whether it's in the gym. I'm like, why is his chest so fucking big? Or how is it the way that he moves? It's not just the exercises that he does, because I do those exercises. It's not the effort, because I do that effort too. Honestly, I put that same effort in. Why does he have such big arms? Why does he have such a big chest? Why does he have whatever? I'm so curious. And then I want to take that curiosity, turn it into something that I can use to improve myself with as well.
Where did you get it from?
I feel like in some level, all of us have that. We're all curious. I think we're all born curious. We're all born wanting to improve and to persevere in some way. And I think somewhere along the line, a lot of that gets quashed down. We get told that you have to live your life a certain way. You got to follow these rules. You got to just do this and you're going to get the result. Just shut up and listen. Don't question things. and be very obedient. That comes down to maybe even the schooling structure. And it's never sat right with me. Like I've always just wanted to just learn more and be excited. And I always think about like, part of it's also from modeling from other people, where you meet somebody and you're like, wow, that guy, that girl, they were really just magnetic person. You think, what was it about them that made them so interesting? What made them such a personality? And it's usually because they asked a lot of questions and they're really engaging. They're really just interested in the world. And I think, when have I been the most happy and excited to go through my life? Because I've got several times in my life where I've felt like I've been in big ruts, or I felt really depressed and down. And I reflect and say, when have I been at my happiest? When have I felt really, really like I'm going somewhere and really excited to get up and do my day? It wasn't when I was making a lot of money. It wasn't when I had a stream physique or anything like that. It was more so when I had something that sparked my curiosity, when I was working on something, when I was developing something, when I was unsure about something and I had to experiment. So a lot of it came from the reflection of that, saying, okay, these are the things that these are the anchors that I got to just make sure they're always around in my life. I can walk into a studio like this and say, yeah, it's a nice studio at the end. Or I can say, why have they chosen to put that little yellow light behind you? Why have they chosen yellow as a color instead of red?
And it goes back to something that I've heard you say as well. And it's about sort of like mapping out something. And like, you can't just fly from one destination to the other. You have like things that are on the way. You have to work shit out on the way. And I could see when you walked in here, I could see your brain ticking and how you were already like learning things as well. And even when we were talking out there as well, you're always curious, and that's very admirable. I would say I'm very curious, but I feel like your curiosity is on another level, which is
there's levels to this shit game.
which is insane, because like today, like there is people that they are curious, but it's almost like they're not. Hey,
yeah,
and that's really admirable from a bystander watching yourself, is that you actually really care and you actually really want to know why. You don't just want to fake it and follow something to support someone's needs and just go, yeah, that'll work. You're like, no, like we actually have to figure this out and debunk it.
Thank you. Glad you recognize that. I don't necessarily think it's at an absurd level. I will say one thing actually, now that you mentioned, is like upbringing and so. I do feel like I was almost forced to have to work a lot harder on improvement and being curious about things, because growing up, I didn't have a lot of the same. I don't want to say it's from like a woe is me kind of thing, but within my circle of friends, within my classmates, high school, everything like that, I was always the smallest, weakest, less smart person out of the bunch. There are people out there who are just so much better than me, and that was like not my subjective sensation. That was an objective thing. Like, they perform better than you at everything. These people outperform you physically, mentally, whatever it is. And I knew that I had to get better in some way. But I also think that's a really good thing, because you look at a lot of people when they're really young and everything just falls into their lap, and they never really learn how to struggle. You know, like a lot of the cool kids in high school, where do they end up after?
Yeah.
You know, some of them, they're God's favorite, so they're just successful in every sense of the word.
Yeah.
But a lot of the cool kid syndrome in high school is like you peaked in high school and then you just fell off because you spent all those formative years having everything handed to you. Life was on easy. You were playing the game on God mode. And then life changed. The whole script of how the world really works got flipped on you. And you didn't acquire the requisite skills in your upbringing to have to be pushed into navigating a lot of the world, because you expect things to just be handed to you all the time because you happen to be a little bit older than the rest of the kids. So you're a bit bigger in those formative years in high school. You're more athletically developed and you're a bit more mature in that sense. So you wanted all the sports and you were the jock. But now in the real world, you don't have that pecking order anymore. Now you're fucked with no skills. And I think maybe if I had to really hyper-analyze it, me being in that bottom end growing up, it sort of forced me to have to like really push to improve and to learn a lot more about the world that I was in, and saying, okay, I can't perform better than this person can physically right now. What can I do to get there if I can?
What was your main hobby at school?
I'd say music was a big part of my life growing up, especially through school.
Did you find that was like I don't want to say like a safe place, but did you feel like it was a spot where you could just sit and play and practice mindfulness as a kid without even really knowing it, or?
No, see, for me, it was very much about trying to get attention.
Okay.
Yeah, I was like, I mean, I like guitar. I like the music that guitar makes as well. But a lot of it was like, man, this is, if I can be in a band, then I'll be cool. It was, again, the aspiration of chasing thing. Like, I want to be cool. I want to be respected. So I've got to get really good at guitar. And for many years, it was me practicing guitar so I can then hit that solo, I can nail that song, and then people will love me or whatever. And there was, a very unhealthy way to go about it. But then along the way, I started to really enjoy the other aspects to it. But for many years in high school, like that, which I think is a very common situation where you're doing these things because you're trying to earn that approval. You're trying to find yourself in a way. It just so happened that it was also a creative outlet that then gave me a lot back at the same time.
And then coaching your mum, is it like, so I coach my mother as well, and I think it's an honor.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to teach her stuff now that she wasn't able to learn, and she taught me the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
What do you notice from your parents and what you learned from them in particular? To me, I learned from my mum and dad just to work hard and to put my head down and just do the work and just do the 1%ers. I'd be interested to hear more of was it curiosity from there as well, or was it a completely different thing that you learned from your parents?
I would say a lot of it does come down to the boring answer of hard work. My parents did show a lot of that. Even now, I look at, like, out of the gym, but I look at the way that my mum would approach a lot of very simple tasks in her everyday life. I'm like, wow, you really just go the extra mile just because it's how you were raised.
Mm.
And I see it as very aspirational. It could be the simplest thing of, you just finished eating and you're going to wash your dishes straight away. Something so simple. It's like you go the extra mile just to do that. Or it could be just a little bit of generosity. I'm like, wow, these are really cool things that just seem, for me, it's an effort to do that. I've got to make a conscious choice, but for you, it's an automatic thing to be so generous and kind and hardworking and just diligent in what you're doing each day. How? It's a cool model to work towards.
It's worn off on you? Do you clean the dishes after?
I try to, not all the time, but it's definitely something that comes in my mind of like, fuck, what would my mum do? What would she do? I have a lot of models in my life of things like that. Like, what would my mum do in this situation? Or even if it's not like a specific person like my mum, I say, what would a good business owner do in this situation? If I'm in a big crossroads and like, hey, should I do this promotion? Should I do this email? Should I do this whatever? Should I do this collaboration? Ask myself, what would a good business owner do in this situation? And that could be someone I've met. That could be just this abstract thought of what a good business owner should do in that situation. And I say, what do I want to do instead? And a lot of times I might fall short of that. And I'll say, okay, why do I fall short of that? And because I need to level up. I need to be uncomfortable. I fall short of that because I'm trying to seek more comfort, trying to avoid the pain of, let's say in this random business example, it's a business case. And I'm like, well, what would I be able to do if I was fearless of that? What would a real business, like what would a Gary Vee do in that situation? Fucking embrace it. So why shouldn't I? Even if it feels weird at the moment, I need to just push through it because that's the progressive overload I need to put my body through to be able to get better at it.
Training again, hey?
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. So from a business side of fitness, starting with your workshops, I want to know your curiosity behind them and why you started with that venture. I also want to know how you have traveled with developing the Ganbaru app.
Mm-hmm.
The reason you chose Ganbaru, I'm assuming it's a Japanese term, to persevere or for one to get better.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is your background Japanese?
No. I just like the word.
Yeah, it's a beautiful word. I love I mean, I've got Japanese art all over me. I'm
Yeah.
obsessed with it. And for me, while we're there as well, I like a term called the in-between time. I don't know if you've
No.
heard this, but it's resonated a lot to me, especially having little one, is that in today's society, we try and find joy in where we get to rather than just actually the journey to it. And it sounds cheesy of like, it's not about the destination, it's about the journey. But the way they put it is beautiful because it's like if I'm in the car and I'm sitting at lights, you can see it. You can park next to someone at a red light and you look to your right and the left and there's people yelling at their kids and trying to get them ready and all this sort of stuff. Whenever I drive or whenever I have time, I take Olivia and Delilah with me and I just try and really embrace and enjoy that time because that is like why I'm alive. Like that's my purpose is to just be with them and be happy in that moment. And I always feel like shit if I just try and go from A to B and don't actually appreciate what's in between. A little bit off topic there. But when I saw Ganbaru, I knew a bit about it and I could really resonate with it because I love Japanese terms and love their art and love everything about the history. And you go to yokais and talk about them as well. But anyway, let's talk about the workshops and then we'll get to Ganbaru.
So the workshops, like honestly, everything I do with business, 90% of what I do in business is reactionary to what people are demanding, which is probably a horrible way to do business. You should have like a 5-year plan. So I'm going to build this. This is the right move because it's going to be scalable. It's going to be very easily marketable. It's got a right market product fit or whatever like that. For me, it's just I've always leaned into whatever my people want, whatever they demand, I will do more of that. And started out as a personal trainer, and a lot of people were curious about what I was doing as a personal trainer. I was like, well, I can't see you because I'm already booked out. So how can I deliver a slice of that to you to be able to learn from what I do and apply it to yourself? And I was just in my own gym, like in the gym that I worked, the commercial gym. I was just running free workshops for people on how to lift or how to eat better, very basic things. I never saw it as like, I want to make money off this. And then I realized, oh, wow, you can make money off this. And it became a thing. But that very soon went into like online coaching for me before the workshops. And I didn't step into online coaching to make a lot of money. Even though, again, as you know, it can be a very profitable business to be in. For me, it was more so just out of necessity, where I was just thinking, like, people want to work with me, but they can't always see me in person. People who do see me in person, it's not a good service to them to continue to see me in person because I've been seeing them for 2 years straight. And now I'm just a professional weight plate loader and we're having a little chat as opposed to actually training and problem solving and fixing things and working towards something.
And as a good coach, you actually feel guilty for it. You don't feel good about that, right?
Well,
because you can see some PTs just loathe it up.
Look, for me, it was never guilt because if someone wants to pay for the service still, that's fine. I don't see it as a bad thing. Even if all I'm doing is just literally counting their reps, loading their plates, if they want to pay an exorbitant fee for that and they're happy to do that, they're seeing value, it doesn't matter. I don't have a guilt with that. For me, it was boredom. For me, it was like, I'm actually not getting as much out of this experience anymore. I'm not happy. I'm not bringing my best self to it because it's not why I started personal training.
And you could give them a little bit more, right?
I feel like I could give somebody else a little bit more.
True.
And I feel like I could give that person a similar service in a different way. So I would migrate those people off into online instead. And I would be able to onboard new people and have that fresh feeling with them. And then eventually it became a point where I was doing a lot of online coaching and working with people from all over the world. And they're like, hey, we love what you do. I know that you do some workshops at your own local gym. Would you like to come do a workshop at my gym in wherever it was in the world? And I was like, sure, why not? I've always been open to opportunities. I'm just like, if someone wants to do something, if we can make it work, let's do it. And that was literally, that started, a 4 or 5 year long tour of me just jumping around Australia, jumping around the world, doing a couple of weeks here and there. And then it became a couple of months and then it became like 6 to 9 months at a time. I'd be away doing these events and planning all these tours. And being able to teach just a lot of what I just do and the way I look at training and biomechanics and lifting, which was very rewarding because it's a lot of stuff that I love nerding out on. Saying this is why we should be elevating the heel or why we should not be, or everything in between, or how to assess your own body and make good train decisions and substitutions. And that's what then eventually led into Ganbaru as it is. because people want to come to these events, but they couldn't because the location, the cost, whatever. Like, okay, I'll find a way to give you the same or the as good a service of learning as if you were here in person, but remotely. So it was like 2017, 2018, I started developing a website where I would house all of these videos from my workshops. And that was the first step for Ganbaru. Just make a website, content site, pump out, here's the lower back module from Perth that I did. Here is the elbow one that I really like doing over in London. So I'll make that the module for that. Come learn and come do it there. But again, it always came just from the reaction of people saying, I want to do this, but I can't do it here. So like, how do I create something for you? How do I service the demand that's coming? I need to pivot into something different. And then that was going great for a long time until people started saying, I love learning the theory. What does that look like in a training program? It's like, okay, now I need to do programs. So you can see how it's kind of backwards in that thought process of people have to sort of prompt me to be like, oh, okay, so you want this now, let's do this.
It's backwards, but then it's also refreshing as well, because it means that you're working on the fly and you're learning more about people in the current moment rather than, trying to get so like, I guess, preoccupied with scaling things and doing it for yourself rather than you're actually doing it for the people.
Absolutely.
And you can see that.
Absolutely. I think so.
You can genuinely see that.
You know, it has bit me in the ass a lot of the time because I'll go and create these things and then I realize that I'm behind because people actually need, because I haven't necessarily thought about all the different options, which has been a big thing with app development the last 6 years, specifically when we started to build out the actual app. Because I built a lot of it based on demand to begin with, I didn't think about scalability. I didn't think about opening up new markets and what that means and what different features people might be demanding or might need, they may not even be aware of at the time. Or even some of the really boring tech stuff of, you know, what platform, what infrastructure should you be developing this tech on in the first place? What's more versatile to be able to create more changes on the fly? For example, without making it too boring, when you're building an app, you can create what's called the native app, which is built on like into the iOS, iPhone, or Android framework using their tech language, or you can build a web app, which as its name suggests, is not built for iPhone, it's not built for Android. You access it on a website somewhere, still functions very much like an app. Benefits being it's much cheaper, it's much faster, you can create so many more changes on the fly. If I want to decide today I want to update everything on a web app, I can do it within a couple of days. I don't have a web app.
Thought you were alluding to it.
Yeah, no, don't.
Okay.
Because we built it all out on, which is what, you know, the vast majority of apps do. They build out on the native platform for iPhone and for Android, and it's still a fantastic option. You do have a slightly more seamless framework for people because it uses similar kind of design features and elements and usability interfaces that you'd expect on Android or on iOS. That's why you build out there, and it works a bit better.
Did you ever walk around the gym with a laptop or an iPad?
Yeah.
It's funny, hey, because I did as well.
Yeah.
And everyone like lost their minds. But I was like, what are you doing? Like, why do you have a pen and paper?
Right.
Like, where's your laptop at? And like, I was tracking volume. This is in
Right.
like 2018 or 2019 when I first moved up to the coast. And everyone's looking at what I'm doing. And I used to be called Data Boy because they're just
Right.
like, you care more about the computer than you do about actually just lifting the weights and stuff.
Yeah.
But it's just so funny to reflect on. And I assumed you would have walked around with a computer as well because you were really innovative and like you were very intellectual with the way you're thinking about things. Now transferring into an app, you must be able to look back at that and have a bit of a chuckle though, hey?
Yeah, totally. I mean, honestly, a lot of the app development comes from me saying I actually really preferred the simplicity of a notebook.
Yeah.
Like I would try to get really stuck into the different spreadsheets and formulas and whatnot, but nothing really beats the simplicity of pen and paper. So I really embrace that. And like a lot of the developments that I put into the app now, I'm like, okay, how do I leverage the benefits of tech? Because I've got hundreds of notebooks filled out that I can't go back with easily. How can I leverage those benefits of simplicity and put it into an app that utilizes the functionality of tech? But yeah, I look back and I'd be like, wow, it's weird how like tech is a big thing now in terms of like everybody uses apps these days. Everybody like now I'm getting people saying, can you make this work on Apple Watch? I'm like, I didn't know that's a fucking thing.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm sure I can do it. I've got to spend some time figuring that out because this tech's going beyond me now.
And I'm sure in 2 years' time, the Apple Watch will be yesterday's news, right?
Probably there'll be something else. I don't even know what will be
That's
coming
the hardest
next.
thing as well, as you learn something and then you get fundamentally sound with that. And then there's something already new and you're like, oh, shit.
Yeah. And that's where like the last few years in business, I've had to make a very big change in how I approach things, where I can't just be reactive. I've got to actually be forward thinking and saying, okay, what's the best decision in terms of what to develop now? Yes, some people are asking for this feature. Is this the best feature to be implementing right now? Or is it better to be staving it off for a few more months, building out something even bigger and better? Who knows? What's a more scalable option that'll give the app more longevity? Because also one thing I never accounted for is in business, it's now at a point where it's its own separate beast. You know, a few years ago when it was a website, I could shut it down tomorrow. It'd be fine. You know, like the end, that's it. But now it's its own living, breathing entity that needs to be serviced and maintained and thought about in its own separate way that's separate to me, which is wild. And I've got to think of what's best not for me or what's not best for the business, what's best for the app itself to give it the best longevity, which is a very different conversation.
Mm. What was it like working with the late John Meadows?
That was probably some of the most rewarding experiences of my life, working with him. And it was never about training. People always say, oh, you must have learned so much like in terms of training, wisdom, and hard work. I was like, yeah, you push hard, and you learn some cool different tweaks and whatnot. But I would say, you asked earlier about where the curiosity mindset came from. I'd say a lot of it actually probably came from him without me even realizing. Because he was someone who was always the underdog. That's why he became so innovative, because he had to work out ways to be able to achieve the physique that he wanted or to make the breakthroughs in his body that he could with his training, because what he was doing, what he saw everyone else doing, wasn't working for him. So like he was curious, how is this guy able to get better results than me despite me working even harder? But a lot of the lessons that I got from him were a lot more about life, a lot about balance, a lot about family, a lot about not going so far off the deep end with the sport of bodybuilding itself, and having a very level head around those kinds of decisions. And he used to tell me a lot about the business mistakes he was making, business ventures he was going on that were falling through, the partnerships, and just seeing him navigate a lot of his struggles that most people would never have heard about and still won't know about. It really helped put a lot of things in perspective for me. Like I remember this would have been 2016 or so. So a long time ago. I was 23 years old or something like that. I was very young. And I just brought him out for an event and hopped off the airport. We were driving in my car going into the city somewhere. And he turns to me and he says, man, Eugene, what am I going to do about money? And he starts telling me about some business issues he's having. And we're sitting there driving in this car of mine that, it wasn't even my car. I had to borrow my mum's car because I was too ashamed of my own car. How beat up was to be able to drive him around. So I had to borrow mum's car to be able to just drive him around for the weekend. I'm thinking, why the fuck are you asking me about money? Why are you asking me about, I say the year 2016 because this is like the period where he was like the king in terms of business and in terms of bodybuilding and in terms of the fitness industry. For those of you who may not know, like back then, he was a guy doing all these big business deals. He was getting all kinds of different accolades. Forbes was writing articles about him. He had everything going for him. And that wasn't just smoke and mirrors. That was really true. Like he was doing really well financially, really well in terms of business. And here he was asking me about money. I'm like, I'm a 23, 24-year-old kid. We're driving around in my mum's car because my car's too fucking beat up. And wow. And it put in perspective that these money issues will never go away.
Yeah.
Business issues, whatever, they're always going to be there, no matter how successful you are. And it's not that he portrayed an image that wasn't true. It was more so just that if you really care about what you do, the territory that you step into, it brings with it a lot of these stresses where you're always going to be anxious. You're always going to be thinking. You're always going to be overanalyzing and worried about the future in some way. Doesn't mean that you don't enjoy the present, but part of you wanting to show up at your best means you're always going to be seeing yourself as slightly inadequate, because that's what pushes you to want to improve. And to the fact that he thought about, man, what am I going to do about money, What am I doing about business right now? What should I be doing? Asking 24-year-old kid for advice. It shows how smart he is, how aware he is that even though things are going his way, he knows that there's a season for that. He knows that it can be taken away so quickly as well, because he's been at rock bottom as well. So he gave me a lot of perspective, because at the time for me, I was like just starting out my journey into social media worlds or whatever, or into business properly. Like I was going away from just being a PT into the online coach, into the workshop person. I was like, wow, I thought that was what I was going to do for the rest of my life. But from that conversation with him, I realized, okay, I need to actually up my game even further. I need to now think about not just the workshops, what's going to come after the workshops.
So he was a big role model for you?
Yeah. He put a lot of urgency and a lot of just coming to realization of like perspective.
Yeah, you guys doing a workshop together was like a match made in heaven.
Mm.
I remember watching his YouTube videos, and the thing that I admired the most about him is that he always had like a very analytical way of looking at things. So if he was looking at like a tricep, he wouldn't just say, oh, we're going to train, much like you do today, right? But you know, like in 2016, 2015, whenever this was, that was very forward thinking. Like to
Yes.
think like, oh, I can train my medial head or my lateral head independently. And everyone's like, what?
Yeah.
You can target or you can bias that muscle like specifically.
Yeah.
And he'd do that. And then he'd also have his family in the background with yo-yos throwing them
Yeah,
around.
yeah.
And there's just this sense of, again, he just enjoyed doing what he does. And there's not that many people out there today that show that much authenticity, like towards what they're doing. They're not that passionate.
No, well, for most people, and I catch myself falling into these traps from time to time, you're doing this stuff for an outcome. Whereas for John, it was always just like, he's doing this whether there's a camera around or not. He's that guy. He's just excited to talk to you about training and to share this stuff and learn about this stuff no matter what. It just so happens it's being filmed at the same time. He's not doing it because he's thinking about, I've got to pump out 10 more YouTube videos to make more subscribers and make more money off that, or to sell this new program. That's all happening there. That's just the side effect of what he does. But he was just more so really excited.
Much like we talked about with muscle gain and fat loss, hey? It's like it's a byproduct.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
you're really tapping into just feeling better, and then everything falls into place.
Mm.
A little bit off topic here, but caffeine cycling.
Mm-hmm.
What does that look like for you currently?
So I try to avoid all the time in general, just avoiding getting to a point of caffeine where I need to use caffeine just to stay level. Because the thing with caffeine is, yes, it's stimulant, yes, it's got a lot of health benefits, you're going to feel really good on it, but a lot of people end up taking caffeine now to avoid the side effects of not being on caffeine, as opposed to for the benefits. Where like when you have coffee, do you really feel the benefits in terms of your performance, in terms of your energy, in terms of your mood? Or is it more so that when you don't have caffeine, you feel like absolute shit? So I've found for myself, and everyone's very different, a certain dose in terms of amount and frequency that allows me to then stop caffeine any day and I won't feel that withdrawal effect. And that varies, of course. At the moment now, I can get away with having a single shot of coffee probably 5 days out of 7 in a week. If I bump that up to a double shot espresso, then I'll feel fucking awesome. But also in those 2 days where I don't have it, I'll feel like shit. I feel the withdrawal. So I know that's my kind of balance point. But that varies a lot as well, like from different lifestyle, if my sleep's going well, my nutrition's on point, training, stresses, everything else. But I highly recommend a lot of people try to get to that point where they can still have caffeine, because it's not a bad thing. It's fantastic. It has a lot of potent health benefits as well. And there's no reason why you shouldn't use it necessarily. But I try to avoid getting to my body to a point where it's reliant on anything overly, and where I start taking things just to avoid the negatives of being withdrawn from it. So for some people, it could be like a 1 week on, 1 week off kind of situation. It could be just lowering the dose in general. It could be a couple of days on, couple of days off. But I urge people to say, don't use it out of a habit. Use it because you want those certain specific benefits from it, and that you feel those benefits from it, or you notice significant improvements. Because if you enjoy the ritual of coffee, if you enjoy the taste of coffee, like I really do enjoy both, you can have decaf. And decaf can taste fucking delicious.
Yeah, if you get a good decaf. Hey?
Get a good decaf. Some of the best award-winning coffees in the world are decaffeinated beans. They're decaf coffee. And coffee snobs like, oh, real coffee should be caffeinated. It's like, well, it's sure in its purest form, it has caffeine in it, but it doesn't mean that decaf isn't legit. And I would say, like, if you're a real coffee snob, you should appreciate decaf because you're purely not doing it then for any of the caffeine dopaminergic reasons. It's more because you actually enjoy that ritual. So I do also notice significant improvements in sleep. And there's no surprise there as to why. Where when I take extended periods away from caffeine, like weeks or months, my sleep is easily, 9 solid hours without trying. And it's a couple of hours of deep sleep a night. It's on my Aura Rings tracker, it's at least the 95% of the time in terms of out of 100 score. And that's also with me having horrible sleep hygiene. I'm on my phone right before I go to sleep. I'm on my phone in bed. I don't use blue blockers like I used to. I don't do all these different sleep rituals. I don't do all these different supplement protocols or wind down routines. I'm on my phone scrolling on social media as I fall asleep. But I still have fantastic sleep because, actually it's just because, but I think a big part of it is the caffeine, where I'm not having it all the time. Because I do notice that does make a big influence on it.
Yeah, I find specifically with my team is that a simple change of just have caffeine when you need it and then have the decaf on like the weekends, for example.
Yeah.
That can be enough of caffeine cycling. Like for me, I have bigger work days Monday to Thursday.
Yeah.
And then Friday to Sunday. I'm still working, but I'm doing a lot less. So I just switch to decaf. And then by Monday, I feel amazing. By Thursday, I feel amazing. I feel amazing every day, but I don't really notice the transition between actual caffeine and decaf, taste and energy wise.
Yeah.
And I do actually play with matcha at the moment as well on the weekends. I haven't really delved into the studies too much, but they do say because it's got L-theanine involved as well that it's quite calming and it can last for maybe 4 hours at more a steady level. Same sort of concept as L-tyrosine as well, I think.
Yep.
But I think that's a simple change, hey, is just like when you wake up on a weekend and you're like, you should be relaxing, why fire yourself up? Like for me, I could go for a surf or something and I feel amazing. I get out of the ocean, I'm like, well, cool, I'm buzzing. And then on a weekday, I might be like, I just want a coffee just for the mental state of just having a coffee in my hand and just enjoying it, like you said, playing with some coffee art and doing a miserable job at it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I try, I really do enjoy the feeling of being on caffeine. And that's part of why I try not to use caffeine too much. So when I have it, I feel it. And like if I have a big leg day coming out, like I want to perform really well. I want every advantage. I'm going to double shot this caffeine and I'm going to feel it. If it's always in there, then I don't feel it. I don't notice it. And it's not as enjoyable to me from that perspective.
It's crazy to think that like people will use, like I even look at pre-workout now and I'm like, ugh, like I wouldn't even actually want to use it because I don't even need that much of a hype, but I know that it's just going to make me feel miserable for the next coming days after as well.
Totally.
Or I'm just going to keep chasing that workout again.
Yeah. And I found like for a lot of people with the energy issues, when they start looking into like what plays into their ability to produce energy properly and feel good, nutrition's a huge part where they tend to be relying on caffeine to give them that quick, dirty hit of energy where maybe they should be looking more towards their nutrition. Maybe there are certain things like B vitamins or whatever else there could be in the energy production process that they're missing out on, that if they were having more of those things, they would feel that little bit better and they wouldn't have to rely on caffeine so much.
Or change up their environment, what they're doing for work, all that sort of stuff as well to find like the root cause of happiness.
Yeah.
I think that's a good segue to talk about fatherhood. We're at very similar points. I've been very intrigued to hear how you've found it so far and how you've managed work, life, everything.
Did you know you wanted to be a father? Like since a kid?
Yeah.
Wow, okay.
I think so.
Yeah.
We had multiple fertility options. So I think being a parent to me over the last coming years became so much more important and I realized how much I wanted it. And when it's like almost taken away from you, you're like, okay, like what am I going to do if it doesn't happen? But I feel like growing up, I knew I wanted a girl. I grew up with boys. I understood that like guys go to the nets, they hit the cricket ball, they pull each other's pants down, they do stupid shit.
Right.
And I just wanted a girl that I could nurture and look after in a different way. But yeah, I feel like I knew early. How about yourself?
Yeah, I didn't. I went through a whole period up until when we had Meadow, I don't want to say not on board, but I didn't really appreciate how much I wanted to be a father. If you would ask me, Meadow's 15 months out, you're 15 months now. If you asked me 2 years ago, Eugene, do you want to be a father? Is it a big urgent desire? I would have been like, it's neither here nor there. I could go through life and just whatever. And I don't think it would have been a lot of regret associated with it. Now on this side of it, having met her, I can't imagine life without her. It's a completely different thing. Like this is absurd.
It's euphoric, eh?
Yeah. And it's indescribable because I had I don't want to say no, but I had very little inkling, very little urge to become a father or to have children or anything like that. Where if the option wasn't there, I would have been like, that's okay. If Katrina didn't want kids, I would have been like, cool.
I was going to say, is Katrina similar?
No, she wanted kids. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And that was a big impetus for me to be like, yeah, you know what? This feels right.
Yeah.
And then, since having Meadow, and it wasn't instant. Like some guys are like, the moment I saw her, everything changed. I was like, sure, things changed. But it didn't really hit me until several weeks, several months of being around. And then it's something that for me anyway, it's grown inside of me. Where Katrina actually said it quite interestingly a while ago, is actually in reference to our dogs. So we had one dog, Boogie. We have one dog, Boogie. And then we got another dog. And she said one day, she said to me, Eugene, I didn't know. I was worried that I wouldn't have enough love to give the new dog, Bao, because I've given so much love to Boogie already. I don't know how I'd be able to do this because as if it's a finite thing in terms of love that you can give. And she was like, but I feel like I've grown in my ability to have my capacity to have love and to share love. And she said that, I was like, well, you know what? I feel very much the same way about both the dogs and also about Meadow, where I never knew that was a thing inside of me, this whole fatherhood thing. And I never would have had that triggered until you become a father. And not even just from the actual physical moment of having, bang, daughter in your arms or son in your arms, like, oh, you're a dad now you must love this thing. Something that you constantly choose to grow and to nurture. Again, for some people, maybe for yourself, you're like, I want to be a dad. That's why I ask. Because I know some guys just like, I knew I wanted to be a dad since I was a kid. I just wanted to raise my own boy or my own girl, whatever it was. And that's fair enough. For me, it was never like that. For me, it's something that's had to grow. And now it's at a point where I'm like, I can't imagine life without them, without Meadow, without Katrina, without dogs or whatever. And that's where I know it's been the right decision for me. And now it makes up so much of my life, not just from like a time demand perspective, but more so I willingly find myself asking the question of what kind of father do I want to be? Like I said to you before, what kind of business owner do I want to be? What would a good business owner do in the situation? What a good business owner would do in a certain situation is a very different thing a lot of time than what a good father would do. And a lot of the time, I'll take the fatherhood option now, even though it would mean less business opportunities or less business growth or less financial freedom, whatever it is, whatever I would have wanted 3 years ago. And I'm happy to make that, not even sacrifice. I'm making the conscious choice towards something different. And that's manifesting. It's been such a different experience, something I never prepared for. I wasn't sure what I was getting into. And it's been, very fascinating for me to just observe.
It's powerful, hey?
Yeah.
I guess going back to knowing I wanted to have a little one, for me, I just, like people would tell me all the time, like, my daughter's done this or my son's done this, and I just didn't have a connection at the same time. I knew I wanted a kid, but I still didn't know how powerful it was going to be, right?
Right.
And then when we had her, I was like, this is actually the only feeling, like, when people tell you stuff and you're like, yeah, all right, like, okay, it's not actually going to happen, or yeah, I know how it would feel. Like you can already kind of pre-assume what it would feel like. When we had her, it was like a love that it's a different kind of love, but you just haven't felt it before. And to me, it's so powerful. It's so motivating. I'm constantly finding it very hard though to find that work-life balance. Right. And I'm very lucky, and I'm sure you're lucky as well in this regard, that working a lot from home, you can be there a lot of the time. But I can't comprehend how difficult it must be for fathers to have to go back to work and then get home exhausted from work.
Mm.
And then basically shower, nappy, bed, repeat. Like to me, that would be so challenging.
Yes.
How do you manage your time?
I time just about everything that I do. So this is a relatively new venture for me, but the last few months I've started intentionally using the stopwatch interval timer on my watch here, just stop starting and tracking everything that I do, whether it's a specific work task or productivity, saying, oh, I got to write this new program, I've got to write this new email. Okay, let's start things. But also things like, oh, I'm going out with Meadows to the park now. Let's start taking dogs for a walk. Start that as well. Not because I'm trying to necessarily rush through projects or anything like that, but just because I like knowing where my time goes. Because maybe you might have a similar experience being a business owner, but you often find you have so many projects on the go at the same time. And you spend every day working or thinking about work to some degree, but you get to the end of your work day and you're tired and you're exhausted, but you can't look back and say, what did you actually do? What was a deliverable? Where did the hours go? Like today you can come back and say, yeah, we did a 2-hour podcast. Cool, that's where 2 hours went. But what about the other 16 hours you were awake? Where did you spend them? Were they actually all, some of them won't have deliverables for you. Like you don't have a deliverable, billable thing that you can say, I got this as a tangible outcome from spending 2 hours with my daughter today, right? It's never going to be a thing where you're going to have that.
Yeah.
But the act of me timing everything gives me that, where I can look back at the end of each day and I can say 16 hours spent awake, which one of those hours was spent maybe commuting in transit, different locations, or was spent actually working, what tasks were achieved, even if it wasn't a completed task because work in progress. I spent 2 hours on this project today. I spent 2 hours with the dogs, walking them around. I spent 3 hours specifically with Meadow, taking it to the park, and then we had family time here. I had this time there. But then even though nothing actually gets achieved in terms of a tangible outcome, I can say, here's where my time's gone. Am I happy with that? Am I content with that? Do I need to change something?
Do you give yourself like a weekly grade?
No. I do it daily. I just say, look, am I happy with how my day went today?
And you just eliminate one thing and add something else in the next day or something.
You know, so like one thing that has come up since I started doing that a little bit, not as much anymore, but I say, okay, what went well today? I achieved all these work tasks. I did all this. I was really productive. I didn't want to film this video, but I did it anyway. I was really proud of myself. It only took me 30 minutes and I was so stressed about it, only 30 minutes. But then I asked myself, what didn't go well today? Oh, I wasn't able to spend as much time with Meadow today. I wasn't able to be as supportive to Katrina today. She was really left on her own for those 2 hours and it really impacted her negatively because she was really stressed about this other thing she had going on and I couldn't support her and be there for her because I was distracted with this. Or when I spent those 3 hours with Meadow, I wasn't as present in the experience. And then I say, what needs to change for tomorrow? And I change that. And I try to change that anyway. It's okay, tomorrow I need to set more of these breaks. I need to change how I approach my day. I need to come home a bit earlier. I need to stop this task then. I need to not overload myself, my schedule as much, whatever it is. But it all starts with me just timing my day.
Half an hour and an hour can mess up the whole day as well, right?
Yeah. So just having that little objective thing where I know where my time goes each day, not because I'm trying to hit a certain quota, but just so I can look back and reflect on it.
It's like a to-do list on steroids.
Yeah, well, it does help me with the to-do list because then each day I'll say, okay, start of each day, here are the 20 tasks that you need to get done. You're only going to be able to get 5 of them done realistically because that's how to-do lists always work.
Yeah.
But how do you divvy up what things go? Here's your plan, go. And then I can actively tell myself, okay, I know these tasks will take me 5 or 6 hours. That means that I can't do all the tasks. Now I can approach my day with a lot more optimism because it sets my expectations wisely. Because otherwise I used to look at my to-do list and be like, why are there still 10 fucking things on there not done? And it'll be frustrating. And the reality is, as a business owner, it's never ending. There's always something new to pop up. It's always something that will be left undone forever. But this lets me make peace with that and get what needs to get done, whether it's in work or it's in family relationship setting as well.
Yeah, I might try all that. That sounds very advantageous. Talk to me about HUgene. So I want to know specifically more about bodybuilding.
Mm-hmm.
I want to know where it all started for you, and then I noticed lately that you've mentioned that you've had to unlearn it.
Mm-hmm.
Take me through it.
Yeah, so for bodybuilding for me, it was just the simplest, most obvious way to train, because all the people that I looked up to, they weren't athletes. I wasn't watching footy players or anything like that, or sporting stars, and think, I want to get better at sports, because I was never good at sport. The one thing that I was good at was lifting weights. One thing structurally, one thing was the only thing I could really do that didn't require a lot of stamina, and that I had a very negative association with a lot of athletically related things and sport related things, because I wasn't good at them as a kid. But the gym was a very level playing field. And then in terms of the gym, if you're going to pursue that as your sport, in inverted commas, what options are there? It's powerlifting and bodybuilding, or weightlifting as well. But that wasn't really a thing. So for me, it was just bodybuilding. It made sense. So I started doing a lot of that, really enjoyed that, and I got a lot of rewards from it, because I have a really nice structure to put on muscle mass, and I'm not really long and elongated. So when the muscle mass grows on me, it looks nice and it comes on a bit faster than other people. So that just kept pushing me down that road. I was like, I like this sport. I really enjoy doing this. And I always thought that it was more so because of that outcome. Like I say, like, oh, it's because you look so good because you build a muscle. And that definitely, played into it. But I started realizing quite early on that I really enjoyed that aspect of not even pushing myself hard, but just learning about my body. I loved experimenting and learning and seeing how it develops in response to different exercises or different workouts or different programs and adjustments to it. And it was such a dynamic journey to go through that was just a lot of fun. And even like when I was a bodybuilder, competitively, I really liked exploring other styles of training, like maybe powerlifting, which is a very close, semi-related cousin, but also things like calisthenics or more athletic-based training, and seeing what else is out there. How can I incorporate that to make me a better bodybuilder, but also move better as a human and just be a better performing person? And I pursued that for a very, very long time. And then it got to the point where I knew how much I loved all these aspects of training, exercise, and learning about myself and pushing myself and experimentation. Bodybuilding started getting in the way of that. Because bodybuilding, when you get to that point where I was like, oh, I can start pushing this and really trying to go pro with this, it takes a very specialized, hyper-focused, singular outcome approach. And I was like, I don't want to do that. I don't like that lifestyle. I want to keep doing what I'm doing in terms of the experimentation side and learning side. But I've got to take more of a one-track mind approach for bodybuilding if I want to get to the next level. I was like, I don't want that, so stop. And then at the same time as that, that's also when, business was at a point where I could really just walk away from bodybuilding easily in that lifestyle, and it had a lot of other rewards going for me to pull me into other directions. And I haven't looked back since, really. The only way I look at bodybuilding now is it's definitely been the most formative part of my training, of course, because one thing I did it for maybe 7-8 years. I've been training for a lot longer than that. But those 7-8 years specifically were very formative years. They were the early years. So that's what influenced you the most. And I had to go back and realize just how much of the fitness industry and my training as well has been influenced just by bodybuilding. Where, make up a percentage, 90%, the vast majority of what you'll see in social media, whether you realize it or not, is based on bodybuilding principles and bodybuilding outcomes or physique outcomes of how to target this, how to grow this, how to do that. But 90% of people who have goals of training in the gym, they don't have bodybuilding goals. They want to look better. Absolutely. That's not a bodybuilding goal. That's more of a nutrition kind of thing, just losing some fat. So we've had to unlearn a way that I look at a lot of the way that I program, the way that I train, the way that I even recommend and create content for people, and so making sure that I want it to be less extreme and more balanced take on fitness, because the mainstream fitness is bodybuilding. Mainstream fitness, whether you realize it, is very extreme and doesn't have to be that way.
It seems like someone's running a marathon, or they're competing in a bodybuilding competition, or they're doing an Ironman. There could never just be like, I'm just going to walk a little bit more. I'm going to train to make myself feel really good. And I'm going to eat an array of vegetables and fruit because they taste good.
Yeah.
It's so intense, which is a beautiful point to us to transition into something that I was really passionate to talk to you about today, since I saw a video about 6 months ago, or maybe a little bit less, about social media. And that's influencers, clickbait, not too much authenticity across the board. And I like to think of myself and yourself especially, and there's various other coaches, and I'm sure they would know exactly who they are, that don't chase absolute trends. They don't completely try and find the algorithm. I guess from a business point of view, you need to understand everything, right? But they're doing it to help people in a manner that is caring and thought through, very intellectual, rather than just trying to pursue what everyone else is pursuing, which makes the whole social media fucked. Like it's cooked because everyone just jumps on and does the same thing, and then everyone thinks they need to do that and look like that and this and that. What are you specifically trying to bring? Because you have a massive presence on all social media fronts. What are you specifically looking to bring to the table?
The way I approach social media now, and it's something that I've had to like really learn through a lot of experimentation, is saying, do you want to build a big social media following, or do you want to build a business? Or do you want to build connections? Do you want to build relationships with people? Do you want to build an impact? They're two very different things. Like, as you know, it's relatively easy to go viral. You can pick the right formula of what you create, and you can get hundreds of millions of views seemingly overnight with that right trend. And when you understand that, you also understand like, well, hang on, all those views, did they actually translate to better outcomes? Not just financially in terms of business, but also, are those views really having the right impact that you want? Are they having a positive impact or a negative impact, or is it just mindless entertainment?
Just makes you feel good for a couple of minutes or a
Yeah.
couple of weeks or whatever.
Yeah. And, I don't want to say there's anything wrong with that, because there are a lot of creators who do that and they set out to do it intentionally. That's fine. Some people set out and their goal is to go viral on social media because maybe they use YouTube and they got Google AdSense, so they get paid by Google. So fair enough, you want to make money that way. I don't. Like, I get paid between 5 to 15K a month from YouTube just from having a channel, posting videos that do well. I don't care about that money. Of course, it's good money. I'm not going to say like that's great money. That's fantastic money. And it goes, reinvesting into other business ventures. But that's not why I create those videos. Because if I created videos to make more money on YouTube, I'd create some seriously clickbait triggering shit. It'd be a very different approach in terms of frequency, in terms of style, in terms of cadence. But I ask myself, what do I really want to be remembered for on social media? What kind of person do I want to present? What kind of impact do I want to have? And also, most importantly, what do I enjoy doing? Because yes, I could get paid more because it can be a very profitable thing by going viral, but then I've got to start showing up and performing a certain way. And that's a mistake I have fallen into in the past when it comes to creating content on different platforms. I'm like, oh, this creator's doing this style and it's working really well, so I should try making my videos more in that kind of style. Like last year or the year before, Mr. Beast was jumping on a lot of podcasts specifically. He's always been very popular, but Mr. Beast specifically, he started going on a lot of podcasts for creators and talking about his creative process, talking a lot about what goes into developing some of his videos. And that's when there was this beastification of YouTube, where a lot of other creators were creating very similar kinds of content, like $1 versus $100,000, whatever, gym membership, jet, hotel, all these challenge-based things. And they were doing really well. And I thought, fuck, okay, so who are some of the really good fitness creators? What are they doing? And what's Mr. Beast doing? What should I do to be able to take elements from their style and inject it to get a bigger reach on social media and do the social media thing right? And I didn't enjoy any aspect of that. It was really, really demotivating, stressful, and unenjoyable to be living life that way.
Because it's not you.
It wasn't me. Again, some people, they love that. And that's totally fair. That's why hey, power to you, keep doing that. But it wasn't working for me. Like I hired a bunch of different videographers and editors who worked for these kinds of channels. I was like, hey, let's create and produce some videos together. Let's make them, of this style, because I know that it works. And more than half of them haven't been posted, and they never will be posted, even though they're complete projects that'll probably bring in between 2 to 10 grand each in terms of ad revenue in their lifespan. I won't post them because I don't like them, even though I know they'll do well. Like it's not worth it because it's like I don't want to be putting that content out. And it could honestly just be like a workout video that I would normally do. I'd post that, but I don't like the style of it. I don't like the style of editing. I don't like the character that was portrayed in there. I'm like, that's just not me. That was for the Mr. Beastification of it.
I also love that you don't start something by selling 10 different things.
Well, yeah.
That's very refreshing.
I try not to.
It's very refreshing.
I do sell my app. I do sell my own business whenever I can.
Because it's good and it's got value. And I would promote products as well if I really do use them and believe in them. I'm all for that. But I'll speak for Olivia here. She likes to watch like a lot of YouTubers that just do vlogs.
Right.
And I can't stand it because whenever I walk past, I just hear, and you can get this for 15% off and this for 50%. And there's like 8 products. Totally. And you know, they're just mixing it and then it's in the bin, right?
Yeah.
So I think the skewed and the biggest thing I'm finding is like the representation between someone with actual knowledge and someone that just looks a certain way is so skewed because people will just go straight to the person that looks a certain way. I notice especially from a female point of view, if a girl looks like that, the girl will go straight to that girl. And that's changed over the last couple of years since COVID because now we have a lot more online coaches. A lot of people transferred over from PT to online coaching, but not for the reason of I want to help someone more. It's more, okay, I'm going to transfer over to online coaching because that gives me more time to go to Bali. That gives me more time to sit at a cafe and then I don't have to deal with people's shit. And another reason why I wanted to talk to you today about this is that I started online coaching when I was in Sydney 7 or 8 years ago, and you've probably been doing it for plus 10, right? So I feel like almost like a veteran in the game. But most people have only been online coaches for 3 or 4 years, and they actually don't know what they're doing. And that's scary because we've got people writing food plans. They have no idea about the finer details of micronutrients. It's just more like protein, fat, carbs. This will work for you. I just worked it out on a calculator. And it's like how we talked about with our first statement. It's like not one human is the same and we're just feeding them rubbish. So that's pretty unenjoyable to watch. But it's very inspirational because then the people that are doing the hard work really stand out.
Of course. I mean, bad, I don't like using the word, but like those kinds of examples of people who are like this saturation of really bad advice or lazy advice, people who are in the game for the wrong reasons or the wrong incentives, they're always going to be there. You know, even before online coaching was really a thing, there were hundreds if not thousands of in-person trainers who were horrible. You know, like working in a gym and commercial, you'll see a lot of trainers make some really dumb decisions. Like that's a horrible choice of things to do. It's always going to be there. It's never going to, the industry's never going to change to the point where that kind of thing just disappears. Because it's always going to be incentives for people to enter into the industry like this and to profit off it and to see it as an easy out as well, especially with the way that social media goes now. It's very easy to make a lot of money on social media and to make a name for yourself. But I always think it's, what has more longevity is that personal brand and like putting yourself forward and growing something very, very powerful that's having a very positive experience. Because all of those, all that noise, I guess, of the influencers and the people who are just sort of sending out cookie cutter meal plans or whatever, they come and go very quickly. There's always going to be thousands of them out there or millions of them out there. But they're always coming and going and changing around. But you'll see there's a select few, dozens, maybe hundreds, select few of certain creators, certain people, certain coaches, certain names within the industry who just have always been there as staples. Been there for years, decades, and they just garner that reputation over time. And that gives them the longevity because they're doing it the right way. Even though you may not agree with all of what they do, I know there should be nobody out there who agrees with everything that I do as well. There should always be some discourse back and forth and disagreements. But you can still maintain a good reputation. That's what I think is most important.
For me, when we were talking off air before and why I do what I do, it's more about trying to cultivate happiness in the present moment rather than trying to pursue something that's idealistic and that I don't really care about.
Right.
Be, do, have. Can you elaborate on this?
Yeah, so this principle, this is probably the most impactful mindset shift that I've ever had in my entire life. And I have to keep reminding myself of it literally every day. And I've done that for several years straight. Be, do, have. Most people live their life the complete opposite way. Have, do, be. Where if you have that really sick, shredded, muscular physique, then you'll be able to do a lot of things that you want with business, with relationships, with life, and then you'll be happy. That's the formula that we've been sold, or that we just know in that the way that we live our life, for many people anyway, where life typically works the other way around. When you work out for yourself who you want to be, that gives you a very firm set of rules or guidelines of what you should do each day. And then that allows you to have a lot of the things that you want in terms of happiness, achievements, all that kind of stuff. So for example, I've already said like the physique one, but yeah, if I have a really good physique, if I finally lose those 50 kilograms or whatever it is, then I'll be happy. So I need to just murder myself with workouts. I need to murder myself and restrict my diet all the time, and then I'll finally be happy. Whereas a slightly better way to be looking at that is saying, what kind of person do you want to be? And how would that person act in this current situation? So you're going out to a restaurant or you're going into the gym to go train and say, what would a fitter, healthier version of myself do in this situation? What would that good business owner do? What would that good father do? What would that good fit person do? Okay, that's what I need to do. And when you start doing those things, then you'll start to achieve what you really want in life instead of chasing that one outcome. But that's what I ask myself every single day, and in many different situations. I say, what kind of person do I want to be in this situation, or who do I want to be? What have I told myself in the past? Am I still living my life in really strong alignment to that? Or have I strayed? And am I getting caught up in something else? It could be as simple as like, my biggest thing that I slip up with consistently is fighting with people on social media.
I saw the other day.
Yeah. Not even fighting with people on social. I shouldn't even say fights, but it'll just be, calling people out and just playing that game. And even if I'm right in a lot of situations, even if I'm in that position where like, hey, I'm doing this because I'm in the right and they're in the wrong or whatever, I've got to ask myself, who do I really want to be? Do I want to be that person who's constantly showing up as negative, calling out other people, putting them down, even when I'm right? Because me being right is just an excuse to justify me being a dick. And I say, do I want to be that person? I don't. So why am I doing this? Why am I acting in this way? Got to change that. So I catch myself out in that all the time, where I get really tempted to just rip into people, respond to their comments, respond to the haters or whatever it is, and just rip them to shreds and publicly post it as well. But I'm like, it's not worth it. It's a short-term gain. It's not really it's not even about happiness. It's about what is that actually the person that I want to portray? Is that how I want to live my life? Is that what I want to attract? And it isn't. And that just recalibrates me.
So something that you ask yourself every day, people should be asking themselves at least once a month or once a week. Because I think a lot of people wouldn't even ask themselves that question because they would be afraid of the answer.
Yeah, well, honestly, whenever I find myself in my lowest points and when I'm really unhappy, because I haven't been adhering to those principles of who I wanted to be, or I haven't asked myself, I haven't checked in with myself lately. That's it, because so much of life, especially when you get really busy with a business or family or workouts or whatever, you have to go into autopilot to a degree. You've got to just start just showing up and just slogging on, just doing the work no matter what. And it's very easy to go into your default autopilot. And then you start to lose sight of what really matters and what you're really doing all this stuff for. And you start to make these small little concessions. You slip back into the habits of comfort. And you stop challenging yourself as much. But we need to really get good at realizing, I need to get really good at realizing that doing the right thing or acting a certain way or being this leader or being a good influence in the community or being a good father These aren't things that you're born with. They're conscious decisions that you make every single day. You consciously choose to be a good business owner every single day, or be a good husband or a good father or a good friend, a good family member. They're conscious choices every single day to be avoiding the distraction or to be avoiding the hedonic lifestyle or laziness or whatever it is. It's a conscious choice. You don't wake up one day and it's just easy for you to not want to just pig out and eat pizza all day. I'd love that. That's fucking great. That sounds awesome. I just want to sleep all day, watch movies, eat pizza, and do zero work.
Live at home.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
It's very easy to make that decision. It's hard to show up every single day and do the other things. So you have to consciously just choose to do that. But it starts with you saying and reminding yourself, for myself anyway, constantly asking myself, who do I want to be? Checking in with that.
And then also not having like an arbitrary mindset, like actually fundamentally understanding why you're doing it.
Yes.
And having a true passion for it and then going after it.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for joining us. I really appreciate it. I know you're a busy boy. And I would be honored to jump on and chat to you again, man.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Appreciate the time. Thank you.